My name's Charlie Stayton. I am the subdeacon at St. Basil the Great Antiochian Orthodox Church. And my story of my path to Orthodoxy, like a lot of us who have been converted into the faith, really is about my spouse, Anastasia, my wife, who was raised Orthodox. I learned of the Orthodox Church through her. And in actuality, it wasn't anything I was not familiar with as far as a liturgical church, because I was raised Roman Catholic. My mother was Boston Irish Roman Catholic, so very Roman Catholic. But I was lucky enough to meet Anastasia and to really understand and learn the true faith in Orthodoxy through her. The first time I ever sat through a liturgy, when we got done, I walked out and I told her I felt as though I was sitting next to God through the whole thing. So that's really how I sort of got exposed to Orthodoxy. Once I began to go to liturgy and to be a part of the Orthodox Church, I began to, of course, like all new converts coming in, wanting more, having that thirst into Orthodoxy. So I began to study. I was very lucky. The first priest I ever met, Father Ambrose, gave me some wonderful books to begin my journey into becoming chrismated into the church. Many of those books I went through rather quick and kept going back to them and saying, what's next, what's next? Until finally he said, I think we're good at this point. Since then, I have finished the Antiochian House of Studies and was able to work through their program to even learn more about the faith of Orthodoxy. And now I teach catechism classes and do a lot of things here at St. Basil's, which is a blessing for me because I continue to learn more, even from the students that come to my catechism classes, very much so. It's been an incredible path for me. I went through a lot of things as a young man. I more or less lost touch with the church, became very disillusioned with the Roman Catholic Church. And then refinding that faith was an incredible moment for me. And more importantly, and I tell all of my catechumen students this, is that we as people, when we hear the truth, we sort of instinctively know it. And when I began to learn about the faith and to read the church fathers and the desert fathers, that truth was evident. It was there all through that moment for me. And so it all led now until where I am. All of the things that happened to me in my life. I was a firefighter and paramedic for many years. I ended up having seizures and having to leave that and sort of reinvent myself. But everything that I have been through has led to this moment. And I thank God for that every day, because having the church there as that pillar of strength is really what's sort of pushed me on and kept me going. And it's been a beautiful and incredible moment and path. And that's it.
I'm curious, what was the number one thing that you saw in Orthodoxy that wasn't there in Roman Catholicism that led you to it?
For me, the number one thing that really sort of affected me in Orthodoxy, where I saw a difference in the Roman Catholic Church, is truly humility. Not saying that there isn't Roman Catholic priests who aren't humble, but the humility within the faith of Orthodoxy, where it is taught with so much strength to be humble in everything you do. And that to me had a big impact. The other thing, of course, is the tradition. I'm a historian as well, and I love history. And when I began to look at the history of the church, all of the traditions were there. And I realized that for us in Orthodoxy, we really have that flat line of tradition, starting with 33 AD and working all the way up today. And, I draw this diagram for my catechumens where I draw a straight line and I say, this is the Orthodox Church. And I draw a circle on that line and I draw a line branching off of it. And I say, this is 1054. And this is the Roman Catholic Church. And then off of that line, I draw 100 branches. And I go, this is your Protestant churches. And so that's a very impactful diagram when they realize that our line is unbroken. And so it really makes a big difference, for me especially, for tradition of the church. Yeah.
And having become Orthodox, what would you say is the biggest thing that's changed in your life, in your heart from before?
Probably the biggest thing that has changed for me as an Orthodox has been truly the love that I see in other people. My wife Anastasia will tell you when she first met me, I was a very angry young man. I was very opinionated about things, very judgmental. If I perceived any kind of injustice, I would go after it. And in Orthodoxy, of course, we're taught that, first of all, we should never judge. We have no right to judge. We are the last to judge our neighbors and our friends and our families. And it has also taught me patience and humility 100 times over. And I really think that is a very important message that we have from the Orthodox Church, is that we must never judge our friends and family and neighbors. And we need to always see that image of God in everybody, no matter who they are. Sometimes it's not easy. I still fail on a daily basis sometimes in judging others, and I ask God to forgive me for that, but we all do that, I think. But as long as we have that, as the Greeks say, that phronemy, that mindset of that we change our mind to be Orthodox. And it's not just on Sundays. Orthodoxy is what I call, it's a lifestyle. It's who we are. People identify us as being Orthodox. They see us as being Orthodox. And that is important to remember, that when we're out, even as simply as walking in the store, if people know that you're connected to the Orthodox Church, we need to carry ourselves within that faith every day. Yeah.
My last question is, what would you say if a Roman Catholic were sitting in front of you right now and they were curious about Orthodoxy?
One of my Roman Catholic friends came to me and said, why the Orthodox Church, Charlie? Why do I need a change? I would tell them, first of all, to read the early church fathers and to understand what the early church was, and to see how, unfortunately, and this is Charlie's opinion, forgive me, but how the Roman Catholic Church has become more progressive. And also to understand why the schism occurred. And it's a great many things. It's not just that moment in 1054. It goes even before that, as early as the end of the 7th century, with the rise of Islam and the change in languages and the Frankish involvement into the Western Roman Catholic Church. There's so much that occurred that caused that separation between East and West. And so it's important that if you really wanted to get to the true church, the Church of Christ, you need to go back and you need to understand the history of the church. And you need to understand who the apostles were and who the disciples were after Christ and what they were doing and what they were accomplishing. And you can, if you do that, you begin to understand the progression and the change between the East and the West philosophy of the church. And, the Filioque, of course, has always been an issue. We always talk about that as being the impact on the Great Schism with the change of the church because of how it separates the Trinity of God. But more importantly, we also have to remember that even though we see a difference in the Roman Catholic Church and they're not in communion with us, we still need to be careful on judging them for who they are. Because there's people in the Roman Catholic Church that are extremely faithful to God, and they're godly people. There is no doubt about that. And you know, we have to be careful judging them just because they fall under the Pope of Rome, or as we call him, the Bishop of Rome. You know, we still refer to him. He is the Bishop of Rome. He does sit on the seat of Peter. And so that is important for us to also remember.